All right. Had to do a take two on that. Yeah, because I forgot to update the headers and stuff. So I'm back on. All right, here we go. It is May the 6th. And you are watching the Rough Report live from right here in downtown Toronto. We're going to be talking about some more COVID stuff today, unfortunately. Yeah, just get the music off there. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Although I'm not sure if I have anybody watching yet. I guess first I'll start with some happy news here. I got Pfizered. Happy to report that I have been officially Bill Gates microchipped, if that joke hasn't been beaten into the dirt enough already. I'm still milking it for everything it's got. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. Wrong screen. Can't complain that I got that out of the way, and it seems like a lot of other people are as well. So that's super good news. Oh shoot, I didn't have anything really pulled up for it, but not really any video to watch or anything for it anyway. But speaking of vaccines, in terms of like American news, it's pretty, people are regarding it as a pretty big move on the Biden administration's part that they are in favor of releasing the basically the copyright protections, the intellectual property rights to the COVID-19 vaccines. Release those and make it so other countries can get easier, faster, inexpensive access to these vaccines, particularly countries who are suffering now, like India, who are badly in need of support. And the situation there is unfortunately very devastating. And we need to do everything we can. And the fact that this was a problem in the first place is what is particularly angering to me. This shouldn't have been a problem. Why? It's the fact that this problem was manufactured essentially by having intellectual property rights around these vaccines. I was recently reading an article in the Jacobin or Jacobin, as I've heard some people pronounce it. Honestly, now I'm confused about the pronunciation of that. But anyway, recently reading an article in there where it was talking in an interview with now I forget their name, but basically laying out that the amount of public dollars, particularly on part of America, that goes into these vaccines and goes into all this medical research, and essentially you come out the other side with them owning the property rights and them pulling the profits, and essentially the people having to pay for those drugs again. So it's really just capitalism reaping off of what should be, or what otherwise would be, a socialist-like structure, where the people pay and put in and pool their money together for these resources and for this technology to be developed, and then everyone can mutually benefit from it. But unfortunately, this situation we've created around intellectual property rights causes strife in a lot of people who can't get access to these things. And because of that, because it's expensive, because it's protected technology, and you're talking about people's health. the having a profit incentive attached to that is, it not only doesn't make economic sense, as has been argued to death, but it doesn't make any moral sense either. And yeah, so it's just enraging that the fact that we've run into this problem that now needs to be solved, where we're now praising the Biden administration for basically doing what is obviously the right thing, and it shouldn't be something that's like, whoa, that's so praiseworthy. It's more like, why hasn't this been done already? Why did we create this problem? It's kind of weird that we deflect from that point. All right, so moving on to the stuff I actually have links for, and visuals. Here, where are we starting here? Let's start with the fact that variants are now making their way around the province. Even Doug Ford here showing in a tweet his concern, saying on May 3rd, I'm extremely concerned about new COVID variants making their way into Ontario. Over 90% of new cases in Ontario are new variants. We're seeing more young people in ICUs. It's clear stronger border measures are needed. It's interesting that he's making border measures the primary focus here. While we know, and all the data has shown, that the primary reason COVID-19 continues to spread in Ontario, the primary reason is the workplace and people continuing to have to go to work. And the fact that he has not, he's totally failed to do a serious sort of lockdown measure, an actual stay-at-home order that would have a lasting effect, and failing to do that over and over by, say, providing paid sick days. Remember just a couple weeks ago, not even, when he was talking about he was going to unroll a paid sick days program unlike anything else the province had ever seen. Well, fortunately, that didn't happen so much, because on Monday, the provincial government voted down a Liberal bill that would have required employers to provide workers with 10 paid sick days for medical emergencies. According to the opposition NDP, the vote marked the 25th time the Ford government has voted down a proposal for paid sick days in 2021 alone. Everything Doug Ford says is just an empty, vapid lie to try and save his own neck. Like nothing the province had ever seen before, huh? And then they voted it down. It wasn't even a bill that the Conservatives proposed. And that's maybe why they voted it down, because they're playing like team politics over people's lives, which is obviously something they've done this whole time. You know, we can remember all those hotspots that were not actual COVID hotspots of areas of spread, but they did happen to be ridings with Conservative MPPs. So playing politics with COVID unfortunately nothing new in terms of Doug Ford's strategy regarding COVID. It's playing with people's lives. It's getting people killed, and it continues to escalate and get worse the more this administration refuses to acknowledge that the workplace is the area of spread, and something needs to be mitigated and done there. And that's basically it. The longer he continues to deny that and deny people paid sick days, the more this is going to happen. And he knows that. He's so much as admitted to it. Yet here we are. It's absolutely insane. And again, he's just continuing to play on this note about, last year the federal government failed to stop the UK variant from getting into Ontario. Now the UK variant has become the dominant strain in Ontario. If our border measures were in fact amongst the strongest in the world, we wouldn't find ourselves in this position. The thing is, those variants are getting around everywhere. And in areas that continue to have a COVID-19 problem, period. The border measures talk that he's trying to lean into here is just that. It's empty talk. It's a distraction from the fact that he has failed. It's all deflection with this government, again, at the cost of people's lives. Doug Ford should resign. And I know I was talking about earlier trying to seriously organize something around that. To be honest, it's just been an exhausting time, and I don't know where to begin. So if anybody can is feeling so vigorous as to come up with some ideas there, I'm all ears. But I've seen people express, I don't want Doug Ford to resign. I want him to lose the election, and it's just like, I'd rather him resign personally, and then have the Conservatives lose the next election, because we won't soon forget what an absolute disaster the Conservatives are. Like, do you remember why we had 15 straight years of Liberals in this province? Because the Conservative before that was so utterly disastrous, is basically what that comes down to in a lot of respects. Let's see here. So then there's this this incident with which video should I play first? Sorry. I'm going to go with this one first. This incident that took place on the floor of Parliament here in Ontario, where basically Andrea Horvath is pointing out the utter failure, particularly in long-term care, that contributed a lot to the spread of COVID-19 that we're currently experiencing in Ontario. We got Brent writing a paragraph here. We'll get to that in a minute. Oh, I wasn't on the multi-stream. I wonder if anybody was commenting on YouTube and I couldn't see it. Anyway, there we go. Well, it's okay. So what Brent is saying here is unionize in general strikes. If you want to cry to government to steal from each other to supplement your shortcomings, to steal from each other. The government steals from me. I don't get what you mean by that. Your shortcomings. You're one lazy or immoral or undeserving of the fruits of someone else's labor. Well, I don't know what you mean in terms of the fruits of someone else's labor, because, as I was talking about before, the fruits of someone else's labor is going to pharmaceutical companies. And by extension there, I guess we could get into the companies that and the people who at the top who have expanded their wealth greatly since COVID-19 has began, if you want to talk about extracting the fruits of someone else's labor, or the fruits of, people continuing to have to go to work in order to survive, when there are easily things we could do to help those people. And you're not a one-man island here. If you're talking about unionizing general strikes, who are you unionizing against? Who's the general strikes against? The companies and the government. Those are the people you have to put the pressure on. Those are the people we depend on for a living, because that's the structure that we have. That's the reality that we live in, Brent. I would strongly promote a lot of places unionizing, particularly Amazon, in general strikes. That's something I've talked about before on this show. But that's, again, putting pressure on the people in power to take responsibility and do what they're supposed to do. So to say unionize in general strikes, and then in the same breath, the government is not going to save you, it kind of doesn't make any sense. That's not a consistent thought. God. All right, let's get on to Andrea Horvath ripping the Minister of Long-Term Care a new one.
This minister denied the crisis in long-term care instead of stopping it. She refused to support seniors in long-term care. She stood by the Premier's fallacy of an iron ring around long-term care. She actually said in this House that they were moving quickly and reasonably, literally, while the Canadian Armed Forces were finding people dying of neglect in long-term care homes. Speaker, this minister has tried to save the Ford government and save her own reputation instead of saving people in long-term care. How can anybody expect this minister can fix things when she can't even admit to her mistakes? Will she resign today? Take ministerial accountability for the things she was supposed to do and didn't do to protect seniors in long-term care.
Minister of Long-Term Care to reply.
Thank you, Speaker. If the Leader of the Opposition had done her job during the time that the previous government neglected long-term care, if you had been a voice, if you had taken the opportunity that you had, years and
this
years
is just
of
nuts.
That you wasted, that the Leader
The
of
deflection
the opposition
of responsibility
closed her
here.
eyes to. Go back to the Hansard. Look how many times she even
Bonkers.
bothered to mention the long-term care word. Look at your failure. I was left to pick up the pieces from a devastating 15 years of neglect. I will not be spoken to that way by the Leader of the Opposition that neglected this sector, and the opposition at the time neglected this sector.
Order. 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 Order.
Yeah, they clap for that. Of course they do. It's just disgusting. The deflection there. Oh, where were you? Well, like, I don't believe they were the opposition of the previous government, first of all. Yeah, to blame it on them for not fighting enough earlier, when, yeah, there should have been more funding in long-term care, but let's also not forget that same administration cut funding from long-term care, and they are responsible for long-term care currently. That level of just not taking responsibility, blatantly, it's goofy, childish shit that, you know, you're kind of grown up or grow up being led to believe this is not something that reasonable people do. But here we are with the people in positions of serious responsibility doing exactly that. And let's not fool ourselves into thinking that's just government. If you've never seen someone in a position of responsibility in the private sector that should not have that responsibility, I would say you're pretty green to the whole thing. Marlon asks in the chat here, what would happen if Ford resigned? What would take place? Would we elect someone right away? No, you would have someone step in, and then there would be an election probably shortly thereafter, depending on the timeline of when the actual election is supposed to take place. You would have an interim person, though. Yeah, so I will not be spoken to that way is pretty outrageous stuff. Andrea Horvath was absolutely right to call for her resignation. And then, here, by extension there, where is this? Oh, yeah. We have this little bit from this video from CTV here.
Apology, and instead said he'll focus on repairing the system.
I will take personal...
Yeah, he stopped short of apology, and he said he'll step forward to fix the system and focus on that.
responsibility. We will make sure we fix it.
But the government has not committed to implementing all 85 recommendations outlined in the Commission's report. One of the recommendations to give personal support workers a permanent raise.
You have to look at the healthcare system as a complex system, and what we do in one area can affect another. And so we have to be very thoughtful about how we do this, understanding the ramifications of our actions.
What does that even mean? Oh, one thing we do here is another. You know, you're afraid of properly funding a system that needs funding. You're afraid of taking responsibility for the fact that your government is anti-healthcare and has damaged the healthcare system and led us down this path. What's careful is being prepared for a pandemic, like so many other more socialistic places were, particularly, you know, like Korea. China did a pretty good job of nipping this thing in the bud, although it was apparently ground zero for the initial COVID-19 outbreak. New Zealand. Like, all these other places have handled this far more competently and efficiently than we have. And it comes down to, in a lot of respects, properly funded social safety nets, properly funded social systems, having the foresight and the intelligence to implement those things and not make cuts from them for the sake of lining your own pockets. These systems work when you don't have belligerent bad actors corrupting those systems and making sure that they don't, which is namely what the Conservatives in Canada tend to do.
The government's non-committal, critics say, means the Premier was only offering a hollow gesture, amounting to taking responsibility without any accountability.
For him to simply flippantly say, I take responsibility, but then not act, then not show the people of Ontario that he's prepared to fire the minister who allowed all of this to happen.
Fullerton herself continues to deflect blame.
We look at, blaming that can go on. At some point, it's
we look at blaming, you and your job.
Isn't serious.
If the minister is not going to take responsibility for what happened in long-term care, I don't have confidence, and I don't think the people of Ontario have confidence that she can truly fix long-term care.
Leading to additional calls for the minister's resignation.
Yeah. Obviously leading to additional calls for the minister's resignation. This entire damn administration needs to go. It's nuts. It's overwhelming. The level of, it's not just like incompetence. It's a belligerent incompetence, right? And like Doug in the live chat here is saying, what world is conservative government going to give something as simple as a raise when alienation of workers' labor is core to their central belief? Exactly. There is no world where they will set a worker first or a people first precedent, because that sets the precedent to the people that line their pockets and benefit them. That sets the precedent that they're not on their side, which is a fundamental problem within our neoliberal capitalistic system. That there is going to be fundamentally a classist war, if you will, a classist divide, a classist conflict between the workers and the owners. That's what this fundamentally comes down to. That's what a lot of fundamental problems are. So many revolutions across the world. What are they based on? What are they based on? The fact that workers were, and the general population, the people that made the country and keep the country going, were left in strife as people profited off their backs. And what did they do 9 times out of 10 when that happened? They would have a socialist revolution or a communist revolution, to which that would be swiftly either propagandized against, or you would have, the Pentagon and the CIA throw a coup in your country, particularly if you're like South America or something like that. And I'm not under any particular delusion that having an NDP government is going to magically fix everything. But there needs to be a continuous effort to put pressure on these systems that are essentially anti-worker and go against the workers' interest, and pressure those in power to continuously act in their interest, or else it will not go well for them. But we obviously currently do not have that. Where are we now? I like how they phrased this headline, actually, because I guess Doug Ford was in some sort of quarantine conveniently after the whole debacle where he spilled some alligator tears on TV about how bad things were. And he still continuously does nothing about that. But I thought this was a pretty funny way to phrase it. Doug Ford goes into hiding as his handlers try to figure out their next move. The premier has not been seen in public for a week. His self-imposed quarantine looks like he's abandoning Ontarians when they need him most. It looks like this was just on April 29th, so it's pretty recent. It would have been the same day as last week's episode. Now it seems like that. It seems like that now he's abandoning Ontarians when they need him most. Like, not this whole freaking time, perhaps. I don't know. What a way to phrase it. I just thought that was kind of funny. Choice words there. Choice words. So yeah, and it's just skimming past some stuff that reminded me about his emphasis on borders rather than where the variants in COVID is actually spreading. The emphasis on borders obviously goes with the fundamentally xenophobic attitude that conservatives try and stoke. And it's been in last week's episode, when I was showing a video of federal conservative leader Aaron O'Toole talking about, Justin Trudeau initially reaching out to communist China for a vaccine solution, and like kind of painting it in this like red baiting, doom and gloom, xenophobic, xenophobic sort of phrasing. Like we didn't have enough problems with that line of thinking, given what was going on with COVID-19. But this is the relationship of that type of xenophobia and fear of China, essentially, that they try and stoke, because it suits their conservative ends, because it paints that anti-communistic thing. It paints China as a foreign threat that is out to dominate us, rather than, as a post I saw earlier today, I think it was a tweet, pointing out that, any sort of headway that you've seen them make over the past while was more America trying to exploit them than anything. But that's a whole other can of worms. But most of that type of fear and hatred is rooted in this idea of anti-communism and anti-leftyism, essentially. Like, you go to any of these anti-mask rallies where you will find that type of bigotry and that type of hatred. You'll find it going hand in hand with sentiments of anti-communism and like the Red Scare of being afraid of anything that is even remotely socialistic looking, right? Like, the fact that you hear the constant cries that it's like the Trudeau's a secret communist, China take over. Like, how often did you hear this stuff? That is the fear that they try and stoke. That is the sort of thing that benefits them. And it comes down to, like, that blood and soil sort of fascistic mentality. Once you start talking deeply about anti-communist rhetoric, you are not far off at all from stuff that's outright fascism and outright racism. Doug here comments in the chat. The largest issue I have with the NDP is that they spout liberal ideals, but are staunchly rooted in traditional politics, acting means to hold the country directly in the middle. I would kind of say both liberal ideals and being staunchly rooted in or liberal ideals and being staunchly rooted in traditional politics and being in the middle, I would say they're all the same thing. That's just the problem with the NDP, is that and like, as much as I would support them more than any other party currently, that is the problem with them, is that they have gone that way. They have lost their more socialistic roots and essentially just become this liberal adjacent party. And it's disappointing in a lot of respects. I think it was just a couple of weeks ago, I was disappointed in Jagmeet Singh for towing that sort of liberal, neoliberal line of not taking a strong stance on the apartheid state that's happening between Palestine and Israel, and coming up with a reasonable solution to that problem, but just sort of, towing the lobbyist line that's allowed that conflict to continue for, unfortunately, far too long. And we still don't have any real solutions there. How can anyone look at Trudeau and see a communist? Well, that's what I mean. Is that, like, when you root so much of conservative ideology in that sort of cartoonish right-wing end of things, you can characterize and make a caricature of anything that's to the left of you is this scary cartoon of what you imagine communism to be. It's pretty obvious that most of them don't know what socialism or communism really is actually defined as, but they're thoroughly propagandized to feel a certain way about it, and a certain way about anything that isn't notably right-wing and notably conservative. Liberals run as progressives and govern as conservatives, says Doug. Yeah, it's more or less, yeah. Diet conservatives, if you will, at best. And it's just like, the goalpost has been moved way to the right in the Western world for a long time. I think even largely what we would regard as centrism now is to the right of what we would have called it 20, 30 years ago. But that's part of the propaganda machine, is to get you to, like, that's all part and parcel to the fascistic leanings of the right wing in its entirety, is get you scared of these foreign powers, get you scared by proxy of their people, especially if there's a pandemic going on where you can align it to them, and just make this whole scary doom and gloom sort of picture relating to your own leader now about working with that same government. And you essentially are now painting this whole picture of hatred towards the other that is comprehensible and almost sensible to that conservative populace. And more or less, I guess I'm explaining how propaganda works, but it's unfortunate that it's effective, that we can other people so easily and effectively with just the slightest push, when, if anything, the lesson that we should be walking away with this in terms of the pandemic is that we're quite obviously all in this together. And we need to depend on each other more and stop being suspicious of, of people's intentions when they genuinely want to do good and, say, have a government structure that works for the benefit of the people. And all the complications in our world climate that can come with that. It's such a tangled web of issues, and but it's unfortunate that we can have people so easily fall into the sort of nationalistic, blood and soil, us versus them BS essentially. Yeah, scapegoating. I don't know why the word escaped me there, but that's essentially what it is. It's scapegoating. If you can blame everything on the shadowy left, Chinese-influenced liberal party and make this whole ridiculous, scary picture of it, yeah, that kind of scapegoating is really effective. People like to have easy answers to their problems, something that's digestible and bite-sized. And you say, if you can point over there and go, that's your problem, yeah, it's easy to take. Extremely unfortunately. So, moving on to a slightly different range of topic here. We're going to go into, I don't know how much time I'm going to spend on this. This is a 13-minute video from our ridiculous friend, bigot, homophobe, list of all other sorts of things along those lines, Steven Crowder. This guy can't, like, his primary audience has got to be incels, right? It has to be. Because the way that he talks and the way he constantly is projecting his insecurities in such a way that is just humiliating himself. I don't know. That seems like, you know, the stinky underbelly of the incel internet in a lot of ways. Because, of course, in case you didn't see, I don't know if I still have. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay. So we're already seeing articles about this. Of course, Billie Eilish appeared on the cover of British Vogue, wearing, you know, lingerie as adult women do, and being that she has not been, as you say, an adult for very long, and was, you know, previously somebody that liked to cover up their body and felt more comfortable doing that. It's this dynamic you see again and again and again, like the ridiculousness of the whole saga of, you know, what happened to Britney Spears, essentially, and how we as a disgusting public, I mean, yeah, you can just read up on everything going on with Britney Spears. I'm not going to get into that right now. But anyway, it's the same old BS, misogynistic, sexist stuff that we tend to do to our pop stars and people in the public eye. And here we go. Yeah. Proof that money can make you change your values and sell out. Billie Eilish shocks fans by swapping baggy clothes for lingerie in Vogue, despite years of vowing to hide her body. And as you can see in this meme here, they've corrected it to say proof that women can change their minds and reclaim autonomy over their own bodies, despite years of, you know, being an actual child. She was a teenager. She, you know, maybe felt kind of more comfortable not being sexualized by the entire world at that age. But now she feels comfortable doing that because she's different now. That tends to be how the process of linear time works, generally speaking. So, you know, she's an adult person, free to make her own choices, do what she likes, be fabulous in whatever regard she feels like. And then, of course, make strong stances about the male gaze and make comments on the male gaze and what that means for being a woman in society. And unfortunately, Steven Crowder just can't handle that. And the irony spewing out of the insecurity that all these dudes have is, it's just chef's kiss to me. Observe.
Hit that like button too.
Hit that. Oh yeah, smash.
Smash.
Look at that.
Oh,
Okay, sorry, right out the bat. You gotta smash the like button. It's so manly, Hulk fisted to punch the like button. Oh my God, they're so masculine up in here. Oh God. It's so manly. You can barely stand it.
There you go.
Finish him.
Yeah. Okay, so
Finish
Billie
him.
Eilish gave an interview for British Vogue, and before I get into anything else, it should be noted that her middle name is Pirate. By the way, I almost said he.
Really?
I almost said he because I'm so messed up with the pronouns.
She's got so many middle names there. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Pirate was just one of many.
Pirate is one of them. So while we're on the subject of how awful men are and how they're all the abusers, she said this about men, Billie Eilish.
It's just this guy can pack so much nonsense in a few seconds. I'm so confused about the gender thing. What is confusing? What is confusing about Billie Eilish being a woman? Billie is, she even has the feminine spelling on it. What are you confused about?
She said, I really think the
But speaking of why men are awful, here we go.
bottom line is men are very weak. Imagine if those roles were reversed. I just think the bottom line is women are really weak. Now, she doesn't say men are really weak, I don't know, maybe just emotionally, or men are weak. And she just says,
Well, yeah, you're removing it from the context of what she's saying. She's talking about how men tend to treat women in the greater part of society, a problem we've been talking about for years. But and the way men react when they're called out and asked to, confront this behavior and address it, we as a society tend to have men react weakly in regards to this. Their reactions are not strong and secure and progressive in order to build a better world. They are, as you can already see on Steven Crowder's face here, about to have a meltdown.
men are weak. Men are weaker than women. And she goes on to say, it's just so easy for them to lose it. You expect the dude not to grab you if you're wearing that dress. Seriously, you're that weak. Come on, go masturbate. Oh.
And she, right there, she gave context to what she was saying. Oh, you didn't say men are weak emotionally. She just gave the example of the type of weakness that she is talking about. Oh, he's such an idiot.
Okay, good. Let me just point out really quickly before we move on to some other points in this article, which I wouldn't care about if not for the fact that I
wouldn't care about if not for the fact that she's a popular woman and I'm a very insecure man.
Have to.
Yeah.
He just said because he has to.
If not for the fact that I have to.
Yeah.
Why does he have to? Why does he have to? Because he's a weak, insecure man. That's why.
Without men, none of this interview would be possible. So the interview was given.
Okay, this is great. I didn't watch much of this video to start with, but I did want to watch a bit of it to get an idea of the context. Right, this is great. The just like the oozing with male fragility that Billie Eilish was attempting to speak to, but just taking it so much beyond that and making just an absolute ass of himself while he's doing it. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Without men, none of this interview would be possible. So the interview was given to British Vogue, obviously a print magazine, printing press, invented by a man, Gutenberg. I don't think. Johann Zahn, a man, invented the camera, of course, for the photo shoot. Arthur Baldwin Turner, a man, invented and created Vogue magazine, though I'm sure men were using the term loosely. The internet, which is where this was largely circulated, was invented, of course, by a man.
Wi-Fi was invented by a woman, but he won't mention that. He's mentioning all the important men that were involved and led to this interview of Billie.
Internet, which is where this was largely circulated, was invented, of course, by a man.
It's so
during my
stupid.
service in the United States Congress, I took the initiative in creating the internet.
Okay, sorry.
You did
It was Tim Berners-Lee, but that was back before new media,
Close.
so Al Gore could just lie completely like that.
Yeah.
And something else to note, her brother Phineas produced all of her music and wrote most of it.
Really?
So men are so weak. You needed a man to get started, and you needed a man to make this. Now look, I think we need each other. That's the issue.
Oh, you just needed men. You needed men this whole time. Oh my God. Oh my God. Just the little fit that he's having here. It's like it's what more can I say that he hasn't already said? People watch this guy and take him seriously. Not to mention, speaking of stoking anti-Chinese hatred in the wake of COVID-19. Remember a couple months ago, might have been a couple months ago or even sooner, I did a bit on him where he did a whole 2-hour episode just full of extremely racist things about China, and he had his page demonetized and maybe taken off for about a week, but he's obviously back to have a conniption fit about, I don't know, women existing. So, and then not to mention all the instances that I pointed out of black racism, where he was trying to, do the guy on the street thing and interview a black guy at adjacent to a BLM protest. And he couldn't even handle listening to a black man's experience and honest opinion for a couple of minutes. Steven Crowder is the most asininely insecure man on the planet. He needs every part of his existence to feel alpha over women, over other races, over other sexualities. Although I know, speculating that every gross homophobe and transphobe is closeted is not exactly cool, but I can't help but to get some closeted vibes from Steven Crowder, and that a lot of his problems there are very deflected, projected. I don't want to go too deep into that, but he seems altogether he seems to seize the opportunity of dressing up like a woman with a certain vigor that goes beyond his sad attempts at comedy with it. Let's put it that way.
No one here is saying that we don't need. I think women are the best of us in a lot of ways, in being compassionate, being nurturing, obviously making a house a home, being great mothers. I think in some professional environments, women are great organizationally compared to men. I think in environments where you need people who can do multiple tasks at once, women are far more efficient than men.
The bioessentialism of what men can do and what women can do, and needing to define those terms. Just classic, just straight up old school sexism. But this is unfortunately stuff that young people watch and grow up with. I believe Steven Crowder's biggest demographic is young teenagers. And this is the stuff they're listening to and getting their understanding of the world from. This is one of their adult figures that they're listening to, right?
Men. And I think, conversely, that men are far more effective at carrying out one high-intensity task, like being in the military or CIA. But chalk one up on the board for you, ladies.
Well, and one of the points that she made, I want to make this because women misunderstand this. They think it's just we just don't have self-control. When she's
I just want to make this point because women misunderstand this. Going into the same type of wrongness in terms of language and generalization of gender that they were attempting to just criticize 2 minutes ago.
But chalk one up on the board for you, ladies.
Well, and one of the points that she made, I want to make this because women misunderstand this. They think it's just we just don't have self-control. When she says, come on, are you serious? You're just going to lose it like that? Go and what she said, right? We are hardwired for this. You have no idea what it's like. And I mean that. If any woman out there is pissed off at me right now, you're wrong.
I'm not pissed off. Well, I mean, a lot of people should be pissed off. I guess the anger is a part of my laughter here. But it's so stupid. No, it's not that we're weak, okay? We're hardwired for this. We cannot control ourselves. It's our wiring. I manage to control myself every day. I see attractive people everywhere I go. I think you do probably as well. It's just in the situations where you feel like you can get away with the abuse and have power over them that you want to feel like you can do this and get away with it. That's the free reign you want to have. That's what he's arguing for. That's the little condition, the little bubble, the little caveat he's trying to create here. It's not that we don't have he goes on to say, it's like, oh, no, it's not self-control that's the problem. It's that we literally have no self-control. It's fucking ridiculous.
I have no idea what it's like. And I mean that.
You
If
have
anyone
no
out there is
idea.
pissed off at me right
No.
now, you're wrong. You have no idea
I
what
have
it's
every
like to be
idea.
a 16-year-old male trying
I do.
not to think about sex. I don't care what you're wearing, just hard enough as it is. But you add on
Why
top
is he talking about 16-year-olds? He's not 16. Who is he defending? Does he think Billy was just talking about 16-year-olds? Is that the focus of this? What is he talking about?
of it, the kind of things that people, kind of dresses or the kind of outfits, or
And
the
to be
kind of
clear,
whatever it is.
if any guy
It's not
touches you
good.
inappropriately, they should be buried beneath the tracks.
Absolutely, 100%
But
of the time.
you cannot, and I'll get to some other quotes, you cannot change that man's perception of you.
Right.
That man's perception of you will be primarily sexual. Now, like, say, I want to come home to her after a long day at work.
Yeah.
Kick my feet up. She seems like wife material. No, it's more, you.
It's a chemical.
What are they even talking about? Like, no one's trying to police your thoughts, guys. You can look at people and think they're attractive. The idea is not to be weak and, like, you know, make them uncomfortable, grab them, stare, get in their space. What are they lashing out at right now? Like, it's just weird.
Reaction inside of us, and that does not give us any excuse to be idiots, right? And men.
It sounds like you're trying to give yourself excuses to be idiots, though. That's exactly what this sounds like.
Or to be criminals.
Right, and men need to do a better job of
Or be
helping other
criminals.
men deal with that kind of stuff. But you have to understand, it is not just because men are weak. That's not weakness. There are tons of men who just...
I'm confused. Did you say only 16-year-olds?
Not just 16-year-olds. I'm just saying at that particular moment in time, it's pretty different.
Oh, it's not just 16-year-olds. I'm making the caveat for all men while saying not all men. Or something. The amount of, like, inherent contradictions that are just, like, happening in this stupid ball right now. Wild. Wild stuff. So, yeah. I think I probably ended up talking on Steven Crowder more than anybody. But, you know, between the blatant racism against many different groups, the blatant sexism, the blatant transphobia, Doug commenting here. Well, Louder with Crowder is his show. That's like his independent thing. He's an independent podcaster, I believe. If he gets funding from an organization, I'm not sure. There are some right-wing podcasters that absolutely do get funded by right-wing think tanks and stuff like that, namely Dave Rubin. But the platform is provided to these people in an environment that leans pretty hard right, the U.S. media market to be a major reason why this gains the traction it does. But it's also like if you're saying the U.S. media market in the same capacity that like YouTube is, or in the same capacity that all these other different internet venues is, they provide this stuff, they push this stuff, like I was talking about with that particular video where he just like basically said racist stuff about China for a couple hours. Within that same week or a matter of days, you had the CEO of YouTube talking about how in the wake of COVID-19, anti-Asian hatred is should be considered unacceptable. Yet you're continuing to host Steven Crowder. You're continuing to push his videos in the sense of like, oh, you watch this other right-wing guy, you should watch Steven too, and the algorithm is like helping this along. They're, the platforms are absolutely to blame in a large capacity. These people are not owed a platform, and if they are demonstrably spreading hateful ideas without remorse, without learning, without listening. I mean, everybody can make mistakes, right? Everybody can have a dumb opinion or like, a dumb take on something and then, listen to better or listen to a different perspective and react accordingly. That's just kind of the human existence, right? But to have a guy like this who's just repeatedly, purposefully bigoted. Yeah, the platforms are largely to blame. And, I'm not saying it's the most perfect solution, but I myself am a bit of a fan of deplatforming and not providing avenues to these people to just spread this outward complete fucking nonsense, really. Yeah, absolutely. Fox News playing in the background of your house, your parents watching it, hearing, guys like Tucker Carlson talk and the notes they hit on. And then, as you're getting into a teenager on YouTube, you don't want to watch the same thing your parents watch. You get into YouTube, and then there's Louder with Crowder kind of confirming some biases that were already there, perhaps. I think you maybe have a point there, Doug. Because, probably the most notable, familiar, mainstream, outright bigot is Tucker Carlson. Almost without a doubt. If there's a worse person in American media right now, I'm forgetting them currently. So that's pretty much our episode. I've hit my approximately 1 hour long mark, as I like to do. There's a couple things I wanted to touch on. There was a bit of like criticism on AOC and some other things like that, but I didn't have time for that. As some people may know, I'm a big fan of AOC. I think she's an extremely good thing for Congress in a lot of ways, some people may even say I don't criticize her enough. I had some criticism. I'll try and get to it, okay? And try and unpack being responsible about even calling out the people I supposedly like, okay? Anyway, thank you so much for everybody who stopped by, participated in the live chat. If you ever have any questions or concerns, my inbox is always open. Maybe we'll address it on next week's episode. Thanks.